Hey folks, welcome back. Now that I've got the repairs done on the topper, there are a few projects that I'd like to do that'll be easier if I finish them now before I install it. So I'm going to install a light bar along the back to replace the third brake light, and I'm going to put a 200-watt solar panel up top and install a MaxxAir fan. So stick around and I'll show you how those projects go. Light bar is going to go straight across the back. You can see where I blended in the old third brake light. It's pretty seamless. And then up top, I'm going to mount 200-watt solar panel here with a MaxxAir fan just in front. The curve of the topper means that I can't just flush mount the solar panel straight on. I'm going to need to fabricate some mounts. So here's the light bar. It's just sitting on the sawhorses there, but I'm going to stick that on. And that's going to give me left, right, brake, and reverse lights. So that'll be nice. So here's a test fit of the 200-watt solar panel. Pretty awesome fit, side to side. I'll just need to use some angle aluminum to mount this on the sides. The wiring for this solar panel is going to need to pass through. To pass that wiring through, I'm going to use this solar pass-through. There's two glands that screw into the back. And this is really simple. It's just going to go down with some butyl tape and some screws, and then lap sealant over the top of those screws. Here I've got the MaxxAir fan just sitting up top for a test fit. So that's about where it'll go, and that one's going to be pretty much just a cutout. On the inside I'll have to mount some wood for the trim to screw into, and then finish it when I finish the interior. Alright, I'm installing the MaxxAir fan, and the first thing I did is take what they call the roof receiving flange and position it. I measured to both sides of the van topper, and I've got a pretty good indication of where it's going to go, and now I'm just going to drill holes in each corner and then cut those with a jigsaw. Alright, holes cut, and what you can see here is that this is actually a cord layup. So there's a laminate of fiberglass on the outside and inside with wood inside. Now the issue is, since we've exposed that wood, it could soak up moisture if anything gets through. I'm not intending to have any leaks, but I'm going to seal that with some epoxy just to be sure. On the inside, I'm going to need to frame out this hole so that there is something for the screws to dig into, and just to give it a little bit more support. I'm going to use this 2x2 and just cut it to size. Got my framing all cut. This is going to get epoxied to the inside and then screwed down with the flange. So I'm going to go mix up some epoxy. I'm going to start by painting the wood and the areas around it with unthickened epoxy resin. And then I'm going to mix some aerosil into that resin to make it glue, to glue those pieces of wood on there, and then I've got some clamps to clamp them in place. That's 4:1 resin and hardener. Now I'll mix that up real good. Alright, I've got the opening all framed out. I went ahead and pre-drilled holes through the fiberglass and coated those with some epoxy, and now I've got those wood framing bits all set up with thickened epoxy and gluing up in place. I'll show you from the inside. So here you can see our thickened epoxy, and I've just run that like a fillet, everything that oozed out around the outside using a gloved finger. I've got those clamped in place. I'm just going to do a little bit of cleanup while that goes to gel, and then I'll screw in the receiving flange. While that cures, I'm going to prep the roof receiving flange. I'm going to use butyl tape to seal this, and this butyl, it's a rubbery, sticky tape that it doesn't really harden over time, so I can put this around and it'll seal up the inside of this flange. You just have to be careful not to go over the holes, because if you put a screw into this stuff, it'll grab it and just start twisting it forever. So I have to leave some room around the holes. I'm going to get that closed up and I'll show you how it looks. Okay, I've got that flange all cleaned up and it's about ready. You just want to make sure that there's not much that's sitting really high. This stuff will ooze forever, so it's going to smush out around the outside, and I'll just clean up whatever comes out before putting down Dicor. But this should be ready to install. Flange is all seated. Some of those screws stripped, so I had to replace them with longer ones. And you can see how the butyl starts to ooze out around. And I'm just going to trim that back with a knife so that it's nice and clean, and then we'll do some Dicor over all of it. Finished applying the Dicor. One tube made it the whole way around with a rather copious application. And this is self-leveling, so all these undulations will smooth out a little bit. It doesn't run at this temperature, it's in the probably mid-40s, but it'll smooth out a bit, and that should keep things nice and waterproof. Now all that's left is to put on the fan. There you have it. MaxxAir fan is all installed. It was a little tricky getting the screws on the side that are under that lap sealant to seat. I just had to push down pretty hard on that horizontal flange and get them started, and then they pulled it nicely down. The lap sealant is smoothing out nicely. And inside, got some work to do yet with electrical and obviously finish. There's a trim ring that I'll install, but I'm gonna wait until I have the inside of the van all finished out, and so that'll have to wait for another day. But we're in good shape. Now time to do solar panel. Now that I got the fan installed, the next project is this solar panel. I need to create some mounting brackets that are gonna go along the sides and stick down to the van, because the solar panel sits flush. So to do that, I'm going to use this angle aluminum. It's 2x1 angle I got from Online Metals, and I'm going to cut that so that it's the length of the sides here, and then I'm going to use this VHB tape. This is a 3M product. It's designed to adhere structural metal panels, and I actually use this to stick my old solar panel onto my old van directly. On this one, I'm going to use a bolt because I'm not sure about the adhesion between the Raptor and the bracket, but I will use the VHB only between the panel and the aluminum mounting bracket, because I have every confidence that this will hold up at highway speed. All right, I got my angle cut down with a hacksaw, filed the edges a little bit, and now this is ready to mount. So I'm going to mount these like so. And I just want this to sit high enough that it will clear in the middle, because the midsection of the topper is a little higher. It curves down by the edges. So I'm going to go about to here. I measured, should be about to that line right there. So I'll just have to stick my VHB tape and stick this on and clamp it, and then I'm going to go grab some stuff at the hardware store. Before I put the VHB tape on, I'm just going to give everything a wipe down with denatured alcohol and then a wipe down with a clean rag, and that will be my surface prep. I've got to do a little bit of prep work on the wiring. These MC4 connectors are really common in solar installations. I don't really want to keep them though on this panel because I'm not going to tie a second panel in, and the only reason to use these in my opinion is to have easy disconnect, and this I'm going to leave installed for the long haul. So I'm going to use this Bouge RV solar pass-through. It's a cable gland, so this is going to get screwed down onto the van with some butyl tape. The wires are going to pass through there, and then these nuts clamp down around, and that should make a good waterproof seal. And I'm just going to splice on my own wiring, and then I'll have that inside the van ready to go to my charge controller. So I'm going to cut these and splice on my own wiring. So I'm going to cut these MC4 connectors off and splice on my own wire. I'm going to use some heat shrink butt connectors, heat shrink wiring, cover, crimp tool, little dielectric grease. And one of the advantages to doing this is the wire that I'm going to splice on will be colored, so I'll be able to tell which is positive and negative at a glance, rather than relying on having the proper MC4 connector. Always makes me a little nervous that I'm going to wire things in reverse. So, there we go. So I'm just trying to trim off the insulation. This wire is a weird size. It's not an AWG wire that's on this solar panel, so it's actually got like a lot of insulation and not a lot of conductor inside. Use a little dielectric grease. Everything you can do to prevent corrosion is going to maintain better connections long term. Ratcheting crimp tool does a much better job than the hand pressure tools like these. I've used these for plenty of work, but they don't really give as good of a crimp, and crimp quality matters. If you buy a heat shrink kit like this, you'll find that all the shrinks are too short. It's much better to buy a roll of heat shrink like this stuff, but my roll isn't quite big enough for this wire, so I'm just going to use 4 heat shrinks and overlap them. These are adhesive lined, so that will provide a good amount of protection against corrosion. So I got a bunch of wire, and I've got those spliced on with butt connectors, heat shrink adhesive, and heat shrink adhesive wraps over top. So now this can run through the solar pass-through, and we should have a good bit. If I have to splice some more on inside, that's fine, but this will get me installed and in good shape. Test fit in the panel, and it looks pretty spot on. I think the spacing is going to be great, and this is how these brackets are going to stick. So I'm going to drill 2 holes, one at the front end of each of those brackets, for a 1/4-inch bolt, because I'm just not confident in the Raptor adhesion. So I'm going to bolt these through and do a little butyl tape, and then the rest will be VHB. Alright, I got VHB mounted on my brackets. I've got 2 1/4-inch holes, and I've got some bolts that are going to go in those holes, and that will bolt the front end of the panel down, just so if we have any issues with Raptor adhesion, the front end of the panel can't lift, and I think the rest of that should hold down just fine. Now I just have to mark a spot on the van, drill those holes, and stick it. So I'm kind of burning the midnight oil out here, although it's only 6 o'clock. I've got the solar panel installed. It is bolted down on the front with butyl sealant and VHB tape. The cable pass through here is also sealed with butyl, screwed in, and then I'm going to use Dicor sealant like I have on the fan all around the cable pass-through and these brackets just to seal everything up and make sure it's nice and waterproof. And the last project for the night, replacing the third brake light with a light bar. This was an easy one. I just drilled a hole and then it was a peel and stick. Now I'm going to come in and fill that hole with some Dicor. I'm going to use some tape to dam it up so that it doesn't leak all over the place. And that will be done for the night. Here's the finished product with the MaxxAir fan, solar panel, and light bar installed. I still need to complete the electrical connections once the topper is installed, but I'm really happy with the progress so far. The only thing left is to actually install the topper on my van. Give this video a like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss that one. And remember, you'll find affiliate links to any of the products I've used in the description. Thanks again for watching. See you next time.